Here's John Shannon, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia, former executive producer, Hockey Night in Canada. His podcast, 100% Hockey and 100% Canucks. And we are going to talk some Canucks here with John. But we start with our poll question, our Yellow Dog poll question today. John, we are asking people, what would you prefer in the men's tournament, the Canada-US final or the USA being upset before the final?
Is there a third option?
What would that be, sir?
Feel free.
I don't care.
You don't care?
Really?
No, I just want Canada to win. So if they beat if they beat, Slovakia, or if they beat Finland or whomever in the gold medal, or they beat the Americans, winning is winning.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I like. I like winning. We've put ourselves in a good position to win.
Temperature check on the two behemoths. What have you made of Canada and the U.S. through the tournament in the preliminary round?
Well, I think Canada has looked very good. I think that there's a small amount of things I'm sure that John Cooper and his staff are concerned about. You do worry about Tom Wilson every once in a while, just because you don't want him to cross the line. I don't think he crossed the line the other day, but I was worried that he might. But I like what they have done with the lines. I particularly enjoy watching Crosby with Marner and Stone. I like the fact that they can move Wilson from McConnor's line down to be with Nick Suzuki and move Nathan McKinnon up. There's a lot of flexibility there. And really what's happened is that the Canadian forwards are so good. They have really, really masked whatever defensive deficiencies we have, if we in fact do have any deficiencies there. So from that perspective, it has been really impressive. On our show, we've had Ken Hitchcock on all week analyzing this stuff, and he's typical coach answer. He said they're 8 out of 10 right now. And
fair.
By the way, he viewed the Americans at 6.5 out of 10.
Whoa.
Yep. That's fair. And we mentioned Czech game, Swiss game were reasonably stern tests, especially through 40
Hitch
minutes.
is so stiff. The Americans are 3-0.
Ken Hitchcock is a perfectionist, all right?
Americans are 3-0.
All right. He hasn't yet seen Yuri Lehtinen out there playing 200 feet, and so until he does, he is going to give them less than 10 out of 10 score.
Thankfully, this is one of the sports that isn't judged, because Hitchcock is one of the judges. My goodness.
So you're right, Blake. But here's the thing: all 3 American games, they have not gotten off to the great starts like Canada has. They haven't. Mm-hmm. And so, we laugh and joke about it in the NHL all the time. 60-minute games. Well, Canada has played much closer to 60-minute hockey in their 3 games than the Americans have in theirs.
Yep.
You can't tell me that your eyebrows weren't raised in the Latvia game.
Of
they
course.
were. You can't tell me your eyebrows weren't raised in the German game. They were.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Then Uncle Sam flexes his muscles and they're up by 3. But they certainly haven't played as consistently as Canada has for the 3 games.
No doubt. Before we move on to Elias and Team Sweden, you would have a great perspective on all of this. We asked Friday on our Yellow Dog poll question, have you ever laid eyes on a better forward line than McDavid with McKinnon and Celebrini, which he went to in the game against Switzerland? We're getting shouts to the 81 Canada Cup, Gretzky, Lafleur, and Perreault. We are getting shouts to the 87 Canada Cup. Of course, Hawerchuk famously on the face-off the game-winning goal, but it was Goulet and Prop beside Mario and Wayne for the bulk of that tournament. What says you? I know they haven't stuck together, but when he plays McDavid with McKinnon and Celebrini, have you ever seen better than that, John?
I think the only one that comes close is there have been a couple of times in some of those international tournaments we have seen Gretzky with Messier and Lemieux. And when you think about, three of the greatest players of all time, and I'm not doubting McKinnon and McDavid there. I'm not anointing Celebrini yet, but he's going to come close soon. So I think that, to me, Wayne in the middle with Mario and Mark on the wings has occurred. So that, to me, would be the only thing that comes close. That when you put Nathan McKinnon and Connor McDavid together, it is just, it's like having a locomotive play with a cheetah. And mean between the speed and the physical force, and then on top of that, you put the enthusiasm and the skill of Macklin Celebrini. It's something to behold. You do wonder, what is in John's mind on the bench, saying, okay, when do I put them together? We if you watch the Oilers a lot, I've always compared when Connor and Leon get played together as it's almost like a drug. It's like a fix. Every once in a while, you need a fix. And you wonder how John Cooper looks and analyzes, okay, when do I put McKinnon up there? And the other thing is that what it does do is I think, and doesn't get much notice, is Nick Suzuki is much more effective as a center than he is a winger. And so putting Suzuki on that line, I shudder to say third line, fourth line, because they're all so good. But if you put Suzuki back in the center, and he's much more comfortable playing that, I think, than he has been playing with the wing on the wing.
We're quibbling at this point. By the way, they were up 2-1 versus Switzerland and manhandling them when they made the initial switch. So that just tells you he needed his fix, and it wasn't really score related at all. Watching Macklin Celebrini have the success that he's had at this tournament, does it make you think that maybe Connor Bedard and Matthew Schaefer could have done just fine? Because it's not a terribly physical tournament just yet. And maybe that was some of the concern. And the stage hasn't been too big for a 19-year-old. Could Bedard and Schaefer have handled this, do you think?
I actually had that thought on Sunday, particularly Bedard. Connor Bedard could have fit in with this club much as easy as anyone. So yeah, the answer is yes. I'll be honest. I did not think of Matthew Schaefer simply because we have been so dominant in the offensive zone. We don't even notice our defense very much.
That's very fair. Yep.
I mean, we revel in what Cale Makar does in the offensive side of the game, but on the, in their own zone, they have been, other than I think one really bad play by Colton Parayko. I think that the defense is being efficient and being unnoticed.
I did notice a slap shot from way out beating Jordan Binnington. I did notice that.
Yeah, and Binnington's
not as bad as Jeremy Swayman.
Fair enough.
No, that's true.
No.
That's a deep 2 versus a full 3 pointer from outside the line. Yes.
Those goals both belong in the Oshawa Generals arena.
Yeah.
But Binnington has played.
I got that, actually.
We've had fun with that story, including today. Binnington has started 2 of the 3, so is the die cast here.
Yep, it is.
Yeah.
It's done. Just like the Americans. They'll go with Hellebuck. We'll go with Binnington.
Yep.
I think John Cooper is, when he told Kyle after the first game, when did you decide to play Binnington? In the first game, he said 358 days ago.
Yeah.
So I think he decided 358 days ago that Binnington was going to be the goalie of record for the tournament. I really do.
Moving on to Sweden, you told us last week, watch out for the Swedes. Now, they got a difficult route here to the gold medal because they have to play in this play-in round and then withdraw the United States. But they get there and nearly do better, nearly win their group, if not for a late goal. Thanks to the exploits of Elias Pettersson, centering a new line with Philip Forsberg, finally getting some run, Marcus Johansson, and Petey scores twice against the Slovaks. What have you made of the bounce back here from the Canucks center?
I see him smiling a bit more. I see him having a bit more fun. You know, I'm not as. I mean, he's been good. Has he been the superstar we all expect? No, but I'm not sure anybody on the Swedish team has been that way. You know, there's what we don't hear and see is you get a sense, you know, with all the discussions about who should be coaching this team and you know, was Paul Maurice considered and that whole concept that these guys are true professionals, but they're NHLers now. They're not Swedish national team players. They're NHLers, and so they all want to be better, and they all want to compete. So I think it's been great for Pettersson that he's been able to do this. I know that it's a routine thing to say. Well, maybe he's going to get his act together, and people in Vancouver are going to be happy when he comes back that he's playing better. I'm not sure that that's really the case. I think you have to have your fingers crossed to hope that. At the same time, I mean, you know, I do think the Swedes, who, by the way, I mean, if they get to the gold medal game, there's a good chance they will have had to beat the Americans and the Canadians to get there, which would be an unbelievable story when you're looking for storylines. So from that perspective, Pettersson's going to have to play a role. You know, we know what he can do. We know how good he can be. He's just got to have the right mindset to do it. And he's got a much better mindset in Milan than he's had in Vancouver the last couple of months.
The concept of a Canadian coach for a Swedish team, like a true hockey nation, might strike some people as a bit odd, and the Swedes might want nothing of it, you know, being prideful as they are. But is that the way to close the gap here? Like Canada and the U.S. are kind of skating away, and again, we'll let this tournament play out. But just on the sheet of paper, Canada and the U.S. are skating away from the rest of the globe a little bit. Does that tighten the gap? I mean, English football has been coached by foreigners multiple times, including currently. If the English can accept that fate in soccer, can't the Swedes do the same, or the Finns, or anybody else for that matter?
I think they could. You know, but at the same time, I think there would be a huge controversy.
Yeah,
you know, they're particularly the Finns and the Swedes. They are proud countries. You know, let's remember, you know, Craig Ramsey coached Slovakia in the last Olympics. We have seen Canadian coaches go over there and succeed. At the same time, I just don't see that. Again, not for a blatant plug, but Scotty Bowman on our show the other day actually mentioned that he thought it would be better to have a North American coach for the Swedes because they are all NHLers. And so
for those teams, you're right. Yeah. For Slovakia, that's half and half. For anybody below that sort of line, I think no. But for a team that's full NHLers like that, I agree. It makes sense.
I mean, because they play 82 games or more in North America, so a North American coach would have a better feel for what that guy does than playing. Because we always joke about, the European teams always they know each other because they play together in international tournaments. Well, not as much as they used to, guys. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of those great successful Swedes and Finns are playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs while the World Championships are on.
Well, that may be good for the gander, but that's not good for the Canadian goose. I don't ever want to see a Yank, Swede, Finn, or Russian coaching our team, okay?
Okay, well, so are you going to say the same thing about figure skating? Are you going to say the same thing about curling?
I will say the same thing about curling. Curling and hockey, to me, are outliers, but these are our sports. This is what we do best, and I don't want to see any foreigner coaching our team.
The current manager for English football is German.
And for soccer, I
understand with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
For soccer, as you know, as soon as Don Carlo wants to say yes to the Canadian team, he is our coach, of course, as a part-time resident of the city of Vancouver with his beautiful BC bride. Moving on. John, this drone footage from the Olympics is extraordinary. Now, I was accustomed to it. I watched some alpine skiing on CBC on the Saturday, so I was accustomed to it in alpine skiing. but watching it now over the full suite of Olympic sports, or at least the sports that are using it. Oh my goodness, the sliding center and the drone shots there. Talk to me, sir. Your expertise is television. How much we are going to see drone footage as part of, well, the future of sports on television?
I think we're going to see it a lot more than people realize. I think we're already starting to see that a lot more. You know, North American sports, we've kind of relegated it to, in TV talk, we talk about scenics. You know, we deal with aerials outside the arena. You know, they have used a drone at the Masters. You know, we're going to see it a lot in golf, I suspect. One of the reasons that I think that people will be a little apprehensive in North America is safety. You know, you don't want to get too close to the athletes. You know, what if because the answer is, what if the drone falls? Can you guarantee me? And I'll be honest, I've had these discussions at the NHL level about drones and about the spider cam, the rails, you know, the wire cameras that are above the rink that we're seeing at hockey, which are beautiful shots. But can you guarantee me that it's not going to fall? 100% guarantee. Can you guarantee? So that has always been the big issue. But the drone stuff is so creative. It's easier to do at the Olympics. So just a couple of things. It's easier to do at the Olympics when you're in the same venue, because they've been working on that skiing venue since and do the technical television setup of that venue for 3 months. So they have been working that 3 months. If we want to do it on a regular basis in North American sports, you're not going to have 3 months to set this kind of stuff up on a regular basis. It's going to have to be specialized. That's the one thing. The other thing about the Olympics, and what I'm really thrilled to see with the Olympics, is the Olympics were always that event where manufacturers would wait and unveil stuff and say, this is where the new technology is starting. High definition television. I remember standing in the International Broadcast Center in Nagano, Japan, watching a hockey game on high def TV saying, oh my God, it's going to change the sport. And it has. It has changed hockey. Tons of technologies, whether it be cameras or microphones or graphics, really get unveiled at the Olympic level. And I think we this time around, you know, over this, you guys are both aware of what happens at summer games. Same thing with cameras going into pools. You know, all the flags that are on virtually inserted into the lanes of the swimming pool. Just magical stuff that has tremendous long-term ramifications for our business, but they get set up and they get presented at the Olympics because the world is watching, and then everybody walks out of the Olympics and saying, yes, I want that.
And a lot of people have been worried about distraction for the athletes, but these, you know, for the adrenaline sports, they don't notice. The skiers can't tell, the bobsledders can't tell.
Yeah, no, but the athletes are going to have to get used to it, much like they have to get used to other distractions.
2 years ago at the Canadian Open golf tournament, I don't know if you recall, on the 17th hole, Robert McIntyre, who was going to win the tournament, Robert McIntyre stopped and turned and yelled at the TV people, "Get that drone away from me. Yep. I don't want him anywhere near me." And so that they're gonna, we're closer to using them. It's fantastic, but there's always going to be people that are going to say, I don't want it to interfere with the sport. I always worry that it is going to interfere with the sport.
Yeah, well,
but I'm conservative in nature that way.
Static sports like golf, like beside a batter in baseball, like that's not going to fly. But I think in 80% of the cases, it can be fine.
Well, and it's excellent insight from John, from a television executive producer, because we all sit there and go, why don't they use them? And John says, well, it's a little more complicated. Like, can you 100% guarantee me that they don't fall? Because athlete safety is paramount. And needless to say, these are the sorts of concerns that leagues and sporting federations bring to the table when they talk about
those drone operators. Those drone operators that are working at Alpine have been practicing for months and months.
Yeah,
practicing for months and months. So if let's say we brought it to hockey. Okay, let's say we brought drone to hockey on the game. So that means there have to be at least 32 professionally trained drone operators in 32 arenas. And then, well, what if he's sick? Well, then we have to have another guy. So all of a sudden, I guarantee you, we'd have to have 100 guys.
John, you
in
don't.
North
You
America
don't,
trained that way.
that's the thing. Starting within weeks, months, and this technology is already there. It is all AI. It's on a program.
Oh, wow.
You just program it, and it follows the action. You do not need a human involved at all. And in the case of things like bobsled, it's on a pre-programmed route. You don't need a human at all. It knows the track, and it knows proximity to the edges of the track, proximity to the sled, and you just press play, and it goes, and it returns home, and it's pretty crazy.
What I'm hearing is these drones are smarter than the three of us.
Tell me about it. By the way, shout out to my pal Doug Beforth, who was the first man to talk about having a camera inside a hockey net.
Oh yeah,
the original net cam was unveiled at the Lillehammer Olympics in 1994. It took Doug a year to convince the International Ice Hockey Federation to allow it to happen. And the technology was so rudimentary. We only had one camera, but in fairness, you had to create a dummy camera at the other end so the net looked identical.
Well, and it's been huge in terms of goal, no goal. Even the Slovakia-Sweden game on Saturday, where a puck looked like it was over the line, maybe not over the line, and the goal.
Well, and then on top of that is that now the viewer has become so sophisticated, because viewers are much more sophisticated now. They want to know where's the net cam. They want to know where's that shot.
That's right.
Where's the perfect shot? It's not like 1982 when it was just the viewer sat there and you gave him everything you had. Is the viewers are now demanding stuff.
They know where the cameras are. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
They know where the cameras are.
Moving on to the NHL, John, Kevin Fiala out for the year, leg surgery after that awful entanglement with Tom Wilson, not Wilson's fault. This is a massive blow to the LA Kings. I know you know Kenny Holland pretty well. He was thought to be a buyer here by the deadline, especially after adding Panarin. You tell me, does the Fiala injury change the stakes for the Kings, or do they get more aggressive in terms of adding forwards and wingers post-Fiala injury?
Well, they get some cap space. I think more than $7 million of cap space to play with. So, question becomes, does Kenny go out and get a rental? In Kenny's vocabulary, he says, okay, we lose Fiala, we lose 18 goals. How do I find 18 goals? Well, you know what? They in theory, they got more than 18 goals already by having Panarin show up. So from that perspective, are they worse off now than they were before the Olympic break? The answer is no. The question is now, does he go out and find a rental? And at what price for the rental? And as you know, guys, as well as I do, there are 31 teams that will now see Kenny coming because he got a guy with a broken leg. So is the price too high for him to do it? There's no way that he's a seller.
No, not after Panarin. Not after Panarin. No way.
Not after Panarin. So the question is how does and this is a league where, broken record, get in and win, and that's Kenny's challenge. He's got to get his team into the playoffs. They're not in right now. He's got to get his team into the playoffs. And so find a way to find somebody that can give us 18 more goals. And then Fiala is replaced.
And lastly, John, I saw you tweet about this last week. Jim Robson on your Mount Rushmore of all-time hockey play-by-play men. A word or two about the gentleman, and I do mean gentleman, that we lost here last week.
Well, it was, based on the stories that I understand and the ongoing, the fact that he was at lunch on Friday with his friends with his hockey pool and then had passed away on the Sunday. Yes, he is on my Mount Rushmore. I do tell people in BC that there was an appreciation for Jim Robson across the country. There really was. He was there. Amongst the greatest, and some of his greatest calls will go down in history, not just in Vancouver, but his call of Bob Nystrom's overtime goal in 1980, the first Stanley Cup final that I was able to produce, will go down as one of the great calls because of its simplicity and its enthusiasm. And that's what Jim Robson gave you every night. He gave you simplicity and enthusiasm, and you could hear the passion in his voice. He truly a legend, truly a BC legend, but in so many ways an NHL legend. I will say, just as an aside on that, and I wasn't going to say it, but I was ticked off. I think the NHL missed the moment. They should have done a release from the commissioner saying that saddened by the loss of Jim Robson, as they did with Bob Cole. It should have been mentioned, but what has happened in the NHL the last 2 or 3 years is that most of the people that would understand Robson's role have retired. And those guys are Canadian, and now there would be people in the New York office that wouldn't know who Jim Robson was.
If it didn't happen during their life, during their adulthood, it didn't happen, right?
Hey, it was my first rule getting into J school. Our professors hammered into us, history does not begin when you arrive on the spot.
Mm-hmm. Right. By the way, Robson, Kelly, Cole, Gallivan.
Yep.
Wow.
I like it.
There's a notable omission there. Is there a history between you and Foster Hewitt?
No, not at all. No. But Foster Hewitt, I don't know if we have time, but I used to argue with Bob Cole all the time. I said, because he loved Foster. Yeah. I'd say, Bob, Foster wouldn't get hired in 1995. Foster couldn't get a job. Foster Hewitt is Foster Hewitt because he was first, not because he was best.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I have tons of respect. My first year at Hockey Night was Foster's last. So I have tons of respect for Mr. Hewitt. But when you talk about play-by-play men, there's no comparison with the 4 guys that I mentioned and Foster Hewitt.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Marvelous stuff, John. Thank you for the time. Enjoy the rest of the games here, and we'll catch up soon.
Enjoy the holiday, boys.
Yes.